Our scripture today is from 1 John chapter 5. This is the one who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ. He did not come by water only, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit who testifies, because the Spirit is the truth. For there are three that testify, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, and the three are in agreement. Ancient words for today's consideration.
Before I start, I'm going to do a little poll. How many of you have ever asked a Sunday school teacher or a preacher what the meaning of the Trinity is, and they said it's a mystery? Is there anybody who's had that experience? I'll never forget when I realized that my Sunday school teachers were bluffing. It was a little scary as a kid, but to realize they had no idea what a lot of what they were teaching me really meant. And I can tell you after seminary that there are a lot of preachers and professors who are comfortable with saying that the Trinity is a mystery. I'm going to do something very foolish today. I'm going to preach on the Trinity. And this is something I've studied for years and years and years. But it's, as you can imagine, it's very intricate and complicated. Well, it's a mystery. So thank you so much for coming. So after I graduated, I really wanted to understand Christianity at a deeper level. I'd already started studying other religions, so I realized that a lot of the meaning of Christianity is best discovered when you study other religions, because the world's religions are sort of in a conversation with each other. But the way I was taught is that it was sort of Christianity developed in a soundproof booth and never talked to anybody else. So it was very self-contained. And the Trinity was very self-contained. Like this person did that, this person did that, this person did that. Sort of like a watch. Each one does a little function kind of thing. And I talked to professors, and what they said didn't make any sense. And I tried to read the books in the seminary library on the Trinity. They didn't make any sense. So I'm going to take a leap at sharing what I've learned. But for that reason, listen very critically to what I'm saying. Don't take anything. I mean, hopefully you've all learned not to trust me by now, but this is not traditional Christianity. What I'm going to be teaching you, it comes from studying world religions. I also took philosophical dictionaries, and I lined up a bunch of them and just went through and looked for triads. Because I think a lot of what religion is understanding the deepest levels of human consciousness. Our consciousness has a certain shape to it. And I feel like a lot of what religion should do is take us into that cave and illumine it so that we can see what's happening deep with it and feel it and feel it. And I think the Trinity is a way of doing that if you don't think it's literal, right? If you think you're just supposed to believe these three, two people and a bird, I believe you can't use one mystery to explain another mystery. Like if life is confusing to you, trying to use a mystery to make it clear doesn't make any sense. The religion I was given was like a flashlight with no batteries. It didn't illuminate anything. It was what had to be explained to me. Part of what we're trying to do here is get beyond that, to get back to what the original roots may have been. And again, what's important is not that you agree with what I say or hear it, but that your world just get a little bit bigger, that your perception of who you are just get a little deeper. If that happens, then this has been, from my end anyway, successful. If not, take an extra cookie on the way out. Let's start with, there's actually a photograph of the Trinity. And this will be very helpful to you. This is, did somebody say holy cow? Yeah. As you can see, the Trinity is European, uses the sunscreen like 40, something like that, because you're that close to the sun. And they look like the Bee Gees. When you think of the human family, is there anything missing here? Just most of it. It seems to me that the early church was so busy trying to keep anything feminine from being a part of the Godhead that you went out with 3 bachelor gods saying, oh, we're just roommates, don't. And I don't know what to make of the little angel heads. It's just a very creepy kind of thing. Happy dreams tonight. So like I say, what I want to do is go deeper than the literal image. Do you remember the second commandment? Don't worship your images of the sacred. The church hadn't been very good about that, have they? Or have we? So what we're going to do is say these are symbols. Like these are not invisible people you have to believe in. They're symbols about the life process. So we're going to go through and see if this can enrich your life, because if it isn't, there's no point in taking it up. The first thing, I'm going to have 3 points, which is good for a Trinity sermon. Let's look at the first slide, or I guess the second slide. This is also very traditional. That's in Latin, obviously. And you see on the top, pater, that's usually translated father. Filius is usually translated son. Spiritus Sanctus, I bet you'll guess that one. And the idea is that God is in the middle of that. So the Latin there says on the outside that the Filius isn't the same as the pater, isn't the same as the Spiritus, but they are all linked to this sacred thing. What I want to suggest is that if this is going to illumine life, a way of saying that is that these are symbols of different aspects of the life process. It's the dynamics of the life process. And the reason there are 3 is because whenever you're dualistic, you get trapped in that. Right? Whenever it's either or, you get trapped in those 2 choices. The Trinity takes you one step further, where you go beyond either of those opposites to a principle that's deeper, that it includes them both and goes beyond either one of them. Think of, like in a song, it's got a hook to it, kind of holds the song together. What do you call the thing on like Google and computer thing where it's behind the scenes and it groups everything, shapes it? Algorithm. My mind went blank there for a second. So things like that DNA, the principles of life, the driving energies of life, the creative germ that's behind your life. You're not learning about something that happened 2,000 years ago. You're not learning about people who lived on the other side of the world. You're trying to go deeper into your own experience and illumine that, to illustrate that. One of the helpful treatments of the Trinity was, some of you know or have heard, at least heard the name Carl Jung, who also studied other religions, ancient religions, and his belief was that the Christian Trinity was in the process of developing when it got written down. So when you have a father, an offspring or child, gee, what would that third piece be? Can't figure that out. Father, offspring, bird, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Two guys and a parakeet. Clearly, they were trying to get away from the idea that there's a feminine piece of that. But there are hundreds of ways to understand the Trinities. It unpacks in a lot of different ways. But what Jung believed was that what would be an oral tradition that would develop and become something clear got frozen, and so you have a Holy Ghost. Not because that's particularly helpful, because that's when the picture stopped developing. One of my favorite things that he said is that when you look at the religions of the world, Jung believed that the universal religious symbol that he saw the most was a circle with a cross in the middle. And he saw that in religions around the world. But he said what was really good about the Trinity was it wasn't finished. It was like a stool that wobbles, which is actually advantageous because you don't want to live in your religion. You want to live in the real world. You don't want to love supernatural beings more than you love the people in your life. It's a horrible thing to get trapped in religion. And yet that's what most of us were taught. It becomes a quicksand we can't get out of when religion doesn't point beyond itself into life and love. When you look around the world, you see the same triads show up. They're understood differently. Let's look at first the Hindu. I'm trying not to get in everybody's way. So the first person there is Brahma. Second person, Vishnu. Third person, Shiva. That's the creator. Normally has 4 heads. In Hindu imagery, every little finger means something. And it represents the essence of life. So the reason they have multiple arms, multiple heads, is it's looking at the essence of life. That all beings come from this one deeper, more profound life. So you've got the creator, you've got this kind of friend and guide in the middle there, and then you have the destroyer. Now for us that sounds very negative, but if you want the whole circle of life, it needs to include everything we're afraid of. Because when you leave that out, when you have a Trinity that doesn't bring in the end of things, where you can't say yes to bad things that happen to you, you can't say yes to death. When you say all the bad stuff comes from Satan, you have a broken system. If it's supposed to symbolize and guide you through the circle of life. But notice how each one of these people has a hand up like that. That means fear not. So as life takes place, it can feel like a hurricane, but there's always an eye of peace in the middle of it. When we've said yes to the whole circle of life. Now, it doesn't feel like that at the time. There are times when you feel like life is over. But if you think about it, you've been there before. When you thought this is it, it's over. And yet, there was healing, growth, and the circle kept going. So fear not in birth, fear not as you live, fear not when you face the end. The whole circle of life. Different religions say that differently. The Tibetan stuff is scary. We go to that because they have the little kind of dragon guy eating everything. That's time. A lot of the stuff that are supposedly demons and hell and this kind of stuff is time. This consuming nature of time. And what the symbol should help you know or learn is that you're deeper than just what happens to you. The life within you is deeper and more profound. That's why sometimes life wants to do something that you don't want to do. Right? You want to play it safe, you want to play it small, and yet the life within you calls you to do something else. And so the circle of life, or the Trinity, is a way of helping us to say yes at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and to realize there really isn't an end. If you're looking at life itself, it's never the end. So the first thing, I think, is to realize it's about the circle of life. The second thing is trying to flesh out the idea that God is a verb. Do you remember when we looked at the burning bush? The sacred name was a verb, to be. When we understand the sacred as being everywhere, always, all the time, for everybody, then you don't have to go looking for it. You may not feel it, but you know it's there, right? If it's the sacred, it's everywhere, all the time, in everybody. You can't always feel it, but sometimes it's just remembering that helps you get through what seems like a bottomless pit time. But if you think it's a noun, then you can go looking for a human being, a large invisible human being. But that can be so disappointing when life caves in on you and acts like no loving parent would do. The qualities of the sacred surround us and are available to us all the time. That's not saying we can feel it all the time, but if a fish in the ocean were trying to figure out what was going on, I would imagine if it tried to get up there where it could see what an ocean is, it probably wouldn't last very long. In the same way, you and I can't step out of the space-time continuum to get a sense of the whole. Now, what a fish might be able to experience, and I've got kind of a fish brain so I can figure this out, is there's something holding it up. There's something making it buoyant. There's something that kind of holding it, pressing on it, that warms it, and it's salty. So that would be like the ocean. The sacred shows up in our lives as qualities. If you've been taught that God is this noun, you can feel completely abandoned and left behind. If you realize that the sacred name given at the burning bush was to be, then you realize the point is not to be religious, it's to be alive. Fully alive, fully loving. Again, the fact that the Trinity wobbles like a three-legged stool is a good thing. It gives you the sense that there's a circle of life, but that it doesn't hold you within itself. Religion should not baptize you into itself. It should baptize you into life. Right? I mean, as magnificent as it is to be Presbyterian, that's not a whole curriculum for a human being. I like being Presbyterian, but I like being a human being better and deeper. Have you ever seen children jump rope and they're singing a song? The symbols of religion should be like songs we sing until we get the rhythm of things, until we can feel the pulse of things. And the pulse within us says yes to the pulse that is around us. So when you look at the Trinity and you have three people, you can make them any gender you want. That's not the point. The point is they love each other. And that community of love, in this poetic sense, moves the world, holds the world together. If you don't believe in a person, it's okay as long as it's personal, if that makes sense. When you realize these are symbols, and you realize God may or may not be a person, but it is a symbol of the personal, that you have an intimate relationship with the sacred, whether you feel it or not. With every person, every animal, every plant, within yourself, the sacred is being expressed. So if the parent, the father, the mother, represents whatever our source is, if the Christ or the offspring represents however we experience that in ourselves and each other, that every individual is a unique and only child, a unique expression of the sacred. And then the Spirit, which, as we've seen before, means breath or wind, it represents the pulse of things, the tie that binds us, the interconnectedness of things. That we realize that we're always being held and guided by these creative impulses. Then life can make sense even when it's horrific. You still get overwhelmed sometimes, you still give up, but it gives you a sense of home again. Because the Comforter is not a destroyer. But death looks like something horrific. Sickness, disease, disability, failure, abandonment, betrayal, all of those things look like dead ends. But they're not. The Trinity reminds us that life goes through all of that and keeps going. So what does it mean to say it's personal, but not necessarily a person? Let's look at the last slide of the day. Thank you. Now this is kind of depressing, I realize, but it's by an artist named Sakio. And it's called the Trinity. Now, you obviously see the Christ, you see the parent. Is that bird the collar, or is it a dove? If it's a dove, it's a traditional view. This painting was done for a church, for clergy, but the artist had a rebellious nature. So some of the things that should be in Latin were actually written in Italian for the people. And what some people believe, I mean, obviously the easiest explanation is that's the dove. But if it's the parent, the offspring, and the virgin is looking out into the congregation, where's the Holy Spirit in that picture? It's not in the clergy, it's in the people. This particular painting is over what's called a memento mori. Mori, I forget. My Latin's not very good. But it means remember you're going to die. Now again, that seems depressing too. And there's down here that you can't see, there's a skeleton and a little kind of coffin thing. And it says, as you are, I once was. As I am, you soon shall be. Remember, the topic is the Trinity. So it's embracing all of life and realizing that you've not been left behind ever. Even if it seemed like death at the time, even if it seemed like despair at the time. It's what, in a sense, it's when on the communion table it says, remember me. That could be Jesus talking, or it could be life itself, the essence, the heart of life, the sacred. When you're depressed, that's maybe what you've forgotten. When you're in despair, that's maybe what has been forgotten. That whoever you are, no matter what you're going through, you're always in the circle of life. You're always an expression of the sacred. You're always an expression of this creative principle of things. When we love each other, even if there's not the person there we want to be with, life is being expressed through that relationship. When we love someone and lose them, it can feel like life is over. The Trinity, if I understand it correctly, is trying to speak to us in times like that, to remind us that life is always bigger than what is happening to us at the moment, and to never give up. That when you love, and none of us can do it all the time, but when you love, life is almost like a parent. See, that's the first person of the Trinity. When you love, something comes to be your teacher, your guide, your companion. That's the second person of the Trinity. Yes, it was Jesus, but it can be anyone who reminds you of the love that's inside of you. And then finally, that sacred breath, the wind, the interconnectedness of things. When we love, we remember the tie that binds us to plants, to animals, to each other. So, in summary, I was told the Trinity is a mystery. And that may be. But since life is a mystery, we need symbols that bring light and life. You can't explain one mystery by another mystery. So what the symbols are, I believe, are ancient methods of remembering the circle of life. If you remember that God is in a sense a verb, that it doesn't matter if you believe, if you're a theist, atheist, that's not the point. The point is to trust the source through which you come. Whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Baptist, The Christ is reminding you that that love is there in your neighbor. And finally, the symbol of the Spirit, the Comforter, is a reminder that even at the end, even in those moments when life seems unlivable to us, that there's a love that welcomes us, heals us, and brings us home. Thank you for your kind attention. We'll take a moment now for you to reflect on what these words mean in your life.